Blake Torres sat in his chair, watching the endless stream of data flow across his screens. The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbited Earth like a silent guardian, always listening for signals from the vast darkness beyond. Blake had been doing this job for 3 years, and most days nothing interesting happened. Space was quiet except for the usual background noise that came from distant stars and cosmic radiation. Today felt different, though. Blake noticed a strange pattern in the radio waves that made him lean forward in his chair. The signal was weak, but it had a rhythm that did not match anything natural. He called over to Emma Walsh, who worked at the station next to his. Emma was the best codebreaker on the station, and if anyone could figure out what this signal meant, it would be her. Emma came over and looked at Blake's screen with interest. She had seen thousands of signals before, but this one made her heart beat faster. The pattern was clearly made by someone intelligent, but it used no human language or code that she recognized. Emma started running the signal through every translation program they had while Blake tried to clean up the static. Hours passed as they worked together. Slowly, the signal became clearer, and Emma's program started finding patterns. The first word they decoded made both of them stop breathing for a moment. It said, "help," in a way that needed no translation. The desperation in that simple word came through even across the vastness of space. More words followed as Emma's computers worked to break the alien code. The message spoke of a world called Valari and a people who called themselves the Valari Republic. These aliens were under attack by something called the Kethmori Horde. The signal painted a picture of peaceful beings who had never known war. Suddenly facing an enemy that wanted to destroy everything they had built, Blake called Admiral Marcus Kane, who commanded the Earth Defense Force. The admiral arrived at the station within hours, looking serious and tired. Blake had never seen the admiral up close before, and was surprised by how young he looked for someone who carried so much responsibility. Admiral Kane listened as Emma played the decoded parts of the message. The Valari were asking for help from anyone who might be listening. They had detected human radio signals expanding out from Earth and knew that another intelligent species existed somewhere in their part of the galaxy. The message said the Valari had always been peaceful and had spent their time learning about science and art instead of building weapons. The Kethmori were different according to the signal. They moved from world to world like a plague, consuming everything in their path. The Valari had tried to negotiate and offer tribute, but the Kethmori only wanted destruction. Worse yet, the signal suggested that the Kethmori did not just kill their victims, but did something else to them that the Valari could not fully explain. Emma showed Admiral Kane the technical data that came with the message. The Valari had amazing technology that could do things humans had only dreamed of. They could travel faster than light and had mastered energy in ways that seemed impossible. Yet for all their advanced science, they had no weapons and no knowledge of how to fight. The signal called humans Deathworlders, which confused everyone at first. As Emma decoded more of the message, it became clear that the Valari thought Earth was an incredibly dangerous planet. The message spoke of Earth's gravity and atmosphere as if they were weapons. It mentioned human conflicts throughout history, with something like amazement that any species could survive on such a violent world. Admiral Kane asked Emma to keep working on the signal while he made some calls. Blake continued monitoring the transmission and noticed it was getting weaker. The Valari were running out of power to send their message across the vast distance between their world and Earth. Every word might be their last chance to ask for help. More details emerged as the hours passed. The Valari Republic included dozens of worlds spread across several star systems. They had built a peaceful civilization that had lasted for thousands of years without a single war. They studied the universe and created beautiful art while sharing knowledge freely between their many worlds. The Kethmori had appeared suddenly from the dark space between galaxies. They came in massive ships that blocked out the stars, and their first action was always the same. They would surround a world and demand complete surrender. Any world that resisted was destroyed so completely that nothing remained but cosmic dust. The Valari had surrendered hoping to save their people, but surrender only delayed their fate. The Kethmori took the strongest and healthiest Valari away. in their ships while leaving the rest to die slowly on worlds stripped of all resources. Nobody knew what happened to those who were taken, but the screams that came from the Kethmori ships suggested it was worse than death. Blake noticed that. The signal was starting to break up. Static filled more and more of the transmission, making Emma's job harder. Admiral Kane had returned and was reading reports that came in from other monitoring stations around Earth. The signal was being detected everywhere, which meant it was incredibly powerful to reach across such distances. The last clear part of the message contained coordinates. The Velari had included the location of their homeworld and the surrounding systems that were under attack. They estimated that they had maybe days before the Kethmori finished with their world and moved on to find new victims. The signal begged anyone listening to come quickly if they intended to help. Then something changed in the transmission that made everyone in the room go quiet. The desperate voice of the Velari was suddenly replaced by something else. Deep, harsh sounds filled the speakers like the roar of some massive predator. Emma's translation programs could not make sense of the new sounds, but everyone could feel the threat and anger in them. Admiral Kane grabbed Blake's shoulder and asked if the Kethmori had found the source of the transmission. Blake checked his instruments and confirmed that the signal was still coming from the same location, but it was no longer the Velari sending it. The new sounds had the rhythm of war chants or victory songs. The alien roars continued for several minutes before the signal cut out completely. Emma tried everything she could to re-establish contact, but only silence came back from the direction of the Velari homeworld. Blake ran every scan he could think of, trying to find any trace of the transmission, but space had gone quiet again. Admiral Kane stood in the sudden silence, looking at the screens that now showed only normal background radiation. The Velari had reached out across impossible distances to ask for help from the only other intelligent species they knew existed. Now their voice was gone and only the memory of those horrible war chants remained. Blake checked his long-range sensors and found something that made his blood run cold. Massive energy signatures were moving through space in the direction of the Velari system. The signatures were bigger than anything humans had ever built, and they were accelerating toward what might be the last free Velari worlds. Admiral Kane looked at the sensor data and made a decision that would change humanity's place in the universe forever. He ordered Blake to send copies of everything to Earth Defense Command while Emma prepared a full report on the Velari technology. Somewhere out there, peaceful aliens were dying, and only the Deathworlders of Earth might be able to help them. Fleet Admiral Rebecca Stone walked into the war room at United Earth Defense Command with her mind already racing through the impossible decision she had to make. Representatives from every major nation on Earth sat around the massive table waiting for her to begin the most important meeting in human history. The room felt heavy with tension as everyone understood that what they decided here would determine whether humanity stayed safe on Earth or ventured into a galaxy that had just become very dangerous. Commander Liu Wei stood at the front of the room next to a large screen showing tactical data about the Kethmori forces. His analysis painted a grim picture of an enemy that possessed technology far beyond anything humans had developed. The Kethmori ships were massive and appeared to be powered by energy sources that Earth scientists could barely understand. Their weapons could destroy entire planets, and their fleets moved faster than anything in human space. Liu Wei pointed to the tactical display showing the size comparison between human ships and the Kethmori vessels. Even the smallest Kethmori fighters were larger than human destroyers, while their capital ships dwarfed anything in Earth's fleet. The numbers were equally discouraging, with the Kethmori possessing thousands of ships while humanity could barely field a few hundred vessels. Capable of deep space combat, Dr. Amara Okafor stepped forward to present her xenobiology report on both alien species. She had spent the last 18 hours analyzing every piece of data from the Velari transmission and had made some interesting discoveries. The Velari evolved on a world with gravity similar to Earth but with a much thicker atmosphere. They were physically frail compared to humans and had developed their advanced technology partly because they needed machines to do things their bodies could not handle. The Kethmori were different according to Dr. Okafor's analysis. The little information available suggested they came from a world with very low gravity and thin atmosphere. Their physiology appeared to be adapted for easy movement in space rather than surviving on planetary surfaces. This meant they might be vulnerable to the high gravity and dense atmosphere that humans considered normal. Captain Elena Vasquez argued strongly for immediate military intervention to help the Volari. She pointed out that the Kethmori would not stop with the Volari Republic and would eventually discover Earth. Better to fight them now while they were busy with other targets than wait for them to arrive at Earth's doorstep with their full attention focused on humanity. Her passionate speech stirred many in the room who felt that helping peaceful aliens was the right thing to do. General Hassan Azizi disagreed with Captain Vasquez and warned about the risks of getting involved in an alien war. Earth's military forces were designed to protect the solar system, not fight battles across interstellar distances. The logistics of supporting a fleet so far from home would strain human resources to the breaking point. He argued that humanity should focus on defending Earth rather than trying to save aliens they had never met. The debate grew more intense as representatives from different nations expressed their views. Some felt that humanity had a moral obligation to help species threatened by genocide, while others worried about exposing Earth to retaliation from the Kethmori. The discussion was interrupted when communication officers announced they were receiving another transmission from the Volari system. The new signal was much weaker than the first message and filled with static that made it hard to understand. Emma Walsh had been brought to the command center to help decode the transmission, and she worked frantically to clean up the signal. What emerged was the voice of a Volari scientist named Morden, who had managed to hide in a research facility while the Kethmori overran his world. Morden's message contained crucial intelligence about Kethmori technology and tactics. He explained that the Kethmori ships used energy shields that could absorb most forms of attack but had specific frequency vulnerabilities. He also revealed that the Kethmori were not just conquering worlds for resources, but were performing some kind of ritual on the populations they captured. The scientist described seeing Kethmori conducting strange ceremonies with captured Volari in massive chambers aboard their ships. The prisoners were connected to machines that seemed to drain something essential from their bodies, while the Kethmori absorbed whatever was taken. Morden believed the Kethmori were trying to steal the life force or consciousness of other species to enhance their own abilities. This revelation changed the entire discussion in the war room. Dr. Okafor explained that if the Kethmori could absorb traits from other species, then every world they conquered would make them stronger and more dangerous. The peaceful Volari might give them knowledge of advanced technology, while other species could provide different advantages. Eventually, the Kethmori would become an unstoppable force that could threaten the entire galaxy. Admiral Stone asked Morden if he had any information about Kethmori weaknesses or ways to defeat their technology. The Volari scientist transmitted technical data about shield frequencies and weapon configurations, but warned that the information came from observations rather than actual combat experience. The Volari had never fought anyone and did not really understand military tactics or strategy. Commander Liu Wei studied the new technical data and found some hope in Morden's intelligence. The Kethmori shields that seemed invincible might be vulnerable to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. Human weapons operated on different principles than Volari technology and might be able to penetrate defenses designed to stop energy-based attacks. Captain Vasquez pointed out that time was running out for any rescue mission. Morden's signal was getting weaker, which meant the Kethmori were close to finding his hiding place. Once they captured or killed him, there would be no more intelligence about enemy capabilities or weaknesses. Any human force sent to help the Volari would be going in blind against an enemy they did not understand. General Azizi remained opposed to military intervention, but acknowledged that the Kethmori posed a long-term threat to Earth whether humans got involved or not. He suggested a compromise of sending a small reconnaissance force to gather intelligence, while keeping the main fleet close to Earth for defense. This would give humanity information about the Kethmori, Without committing to a full-scale war, Dr. Okafor supported the reconnaissance mission, but wanted to include specialists who could study both alien species. Understanding how the Kethmori absorption process worked might lead to ways to counter it or reverse its effects. She also wanted to establish communication with any surviving Valari, who might have valuable information about the enemy. The discussion was interrupted again, when long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures moving through space toward Earth sector of the galaxy. The sensor data showed a fleet much larger than anything seen during the attack on the Valari homeworld. Commander Liu Wei estimated that the approaching force contained enough ships to overwhelm Earth's defenses even if every human vessel was perfectly positioned. Admiral Stone realized that the debate about intervention had become meaningless because the Kethmori had already decided to target Earth. Whether humanity tried to help the Valari or not, the enemy was coming and would arrive within days rather than weeks. The only question now was whether Earth would face this threat alone or with whatever allies they could find among the surviving aliens. Morden's signal suddenly cut out in the middle of transmitting shield frequency data. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout the command center as sensors showed the approaching Kethmori fleet had changed course and was now heading directly toward the solar system. The time for debate had ended, and Admiral Stone knew that humanity was about to face its first real test as a spacefaring species. Captain Vasquez stood up and asked for permission to begin mobilizing the fleet immediately. General Azizi nodded his agreement, knowing that defense was now the only option available. Dr. Okafor requested priority access to all xenobiology research facilities to find ways to exploit Kethmori weaknesses before they arrived. Admiral Stone looked around the room at faces that reflected determination mixed with fear. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming about meeting other intelligent species, but had never imagined that first contact would come in the form of a genocidal enemy. She gave the orders that would transform Earth from a peaceful world into the center of an interstellar war that could determine the fate of multiple species across the galaxy. Colonel James Mitchell stood on the launch deck watching the largest fleet in human history prepare for departure. Ships from every nation on Earth had come together under unified command for the first time since the formation of the United Earth Defense Force. The vessels ranged from massive battleships that had never been tested in real combat to small fighters piloted by volunteers who understood they might never return home. Mitchell felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders as he realized that the survival of humanity might depend on decisions he would make in the coming days. Dr. Sophie Chun worked frantically in her laboratory deep beneath the Earth Defense Command facility, trying to turn humanity's biological advantages into weapons of war. Her research had revealed something remarkable about human physiology that other species would find impossible to understand. Humans produced adrenaline during stress, which increased their strength, speed, and pain tolerance to levels that would kill most other life forms. What humans considered normal reactions to danger were actually superhuman abilities by galactic standards. Chain's team had been studying the limited data available about both the Valari and Kethmori biology. The Valari were peaceful because their bodies could not handle the stress of conflict. Their nervous systems would shut down when faced with violence, making them physically incapable of fighting even to save their own lives. The Kethmori had evolved as predators, but on a world where prey always ran or submitted, making them unprepared for creatures that fought back when cornered. Marine Sergeant Alex Rivera led the training of specialized combat units that military command had started calling terror squads. These soldiers were equipped with weapons and armor designed to maximize the psychological impact of human appearance and behavior. The squads practiced fighting techniques that emphasized aggression and unpredictability, while their equipment was painted in colors and patterns meant to trigger fear responses in alien minds. Rivera had volunteered for the program after learning what the Kethmori did to capture populations. The idea of alien predators draining the life from peaceful species made his blood boil with anger that he channeled into training his soldiers. Each member of the terror squads understood that their job was not just to fight the enemy, but to shatter their confidence by proving that humans were not prey to be easily consumed. Intelligence Officer Maya Patel spent her time monitoring intercepted Kethmori communications, trying to understand how the enemy thought and planned. What she discovered changed everything the military thought they knew about alien warfare. The Kethmori had been expanding across the galaxy for thousands of years, and had never encountered a species that actually became more dangerous when attacked. Patel's analysis of enemy communications revealed that the Kethmori categorized all other species as either predators or prey based on their initial response to threat. Species that fought back were labeled as predators and faced with overwhelming force, while those that fled or tried to negotiate were classified as prey and hunted systematically. The Kethmori had no category for creatures like humans who seemed like prey but fought like predators when threatened. The human fleet launched from Earth orbit with experimental weapons that had been rushed through testing in the weeks since first contact with the Valari. Dr. Chin's research had led to the development of biochemical weapons that exploited the differences between human and alien biology. Gases that were harmless to humans would be lethal to creatures adapted to low-gravity worlds, while sonic weapons used frequencies that caused pain in alien nervous systems. Colonel Mitchell commanded the fleet from the bridge of the battleship Defiance as they traveled toward the Valari system using coordinates provided by Morden before his signal was lost. The journey would take several days even at maximum speed, giving the crews time to prepare for their first battle against an enemy that outgunned them in every conventional way. Mitchell used the time to review tactical plans that relied on human unpredictability rather than superior firepower. The fleet approached the edge of the Valari system. Long-range sensors detected signs of survivors hiding in asteroid fields and damaged space stations. The main Valari worlds showed no signs of life, but scattered groups of aliens had managed to avoid capture by hiding in places the Kethmori considered unimportant. Mitchell ordered rescue operations to begin immediately while keeping the main fleet ready for enemy contact. The first group of Valari refugees brought aboard human ships were amazed by what they saw as impossible conditions. The gravity on human vessels was so strong that most Valari could barely stand, while the atmosphere was so dense they needed breathing assistance to survive. The humans moving easily through these deadly conditions seemed like creatures from a nightmare world that should not be able to support life. Valari engineer Kalthara provided crucial intelligence about Kethmori shield technology and weapon systems. She had been working on planetary defenses when the invasion began and had observed enemy ships in action before escaping to an asteroid mining station. Her technical knowledge combined with human military thinking led to new tactical approaches that might penetrate enemy defenses. Kalthara warned the humans that the Kethmori fleet included vessels called Apex predators that were unlike anything the Valari had seen before. These ships were not just weapons but mobile laboratories where the Kethmori conducted their absorption rituals on captured populations. The apex predators were heavily shielded and defended because they contained the most valuable prizes from each conquered world. Dr. Shane studied biological samples from the rescued Valari and confirmed her theories about the differences between species. Human blood contained chemicals that would be toxic to alien biology, while human muscle tissue was far denser and stronger than anything the Valari possessed. These physical advantages meant that humans could survive in environments that would quickly kill other species. Sergeant Rivera's terror squads practiced boarding actions using simulated alien ship layouts provided by Kalthara. The Valari engineer was disturbed by human combat tactics that seemed designed to maximize psychological trauma rather than simply defeating enemies efficiently. She could not understand why humans would choose methods that required them to face greater personal risk in order to increase enemy suffering. Maya Patel continued monitoring Kethmori communications and detected increasing confusion in enemy transmissions. The Kethmori were having difficulty classifying humans based on their standard predator versus prey categories. Human refugees who fled their homeworld appeared to be prey, but the same species was sending warships to attack Kethmori forces suggesting predator behavior. the human fleet completed its approach to the Valari system and prepared to drop out of hyperspace near the largest concentration of enemy ships. Colonel Mitchell knew that his forces were outnumbered and outgunned, but hoped that human unpredictability would provide enough advantage to achieve their objectives. The plan was to rescue as many Valari survivors as possible while gathering intelligence about Kethmori, capabilities for the larger war to come. As the fleet prepared to enter normal space, sensors detected an unexpected development that changed everything. The Kethmori had not been caught off guard by the human approach, but had instead arranged their ships in a complex formation designed to trap any rescue force. Enemy vessels surrounded the area where the human fleet would emerge from hyperspace, while additional forces waited in nearby asteroid fields. Colonel Mitchell realized that the Kethmori had been monitoring human communications and had prepared an ambush based on their understanding of typical rescue operations. The enemy expected humans to behave like other species that would retreat when faced with overwhelming odds or attempt to negotiate for the release of prisoners. They had no experience dealing with creatures that became more dangerous when cornered. Dr. Chun's research team made a final breakthrough as the fleet prepared for battle. Human brain chemistry under stress produced combinations of neurotransmitters that would cause permanent damage to alien nervous systems. This meant that humans fighting in close combat would literally be toxic to enemy soldiers through skin contact or shared atmosphere and enclosed spaces. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly into the Kethmori trap with hundreds of vague enemy ships positioned to destroy them before they could react. What the aliens had planned as a quick slaughter of inferior prey was about to become their first encounter with true Deathworlders, who thrived on the kind of desperate odds that would break any other species. Mitchell looked at the tactical display, showing his small fleet surrounded by enemies, and felt his pulse quicken with the anticipation of battle. Around him, his crew prepared for combat with the calm efficiency that came from knowing they were exactly where they belonged. The Kethmori were about to learn why the galaxy should fear the creatures that called the Deathworld Earth their home. Commander Ryan Foster watched the tactical display as hundreds of Kethmori ships closed in around his squadron, trying to complete their ambush. The enemy had positioned themselves perfectly to destroy any normal rescue fleet, but they had made one critical error in their planning. They expected humans to behave like every other species they had encountered by either fleeing immediately or attempting to surrender when faced with impossible odds. Instead, Foster gave the order that would begin humanity's first interstellar war with a move so aggressive that it would be remembered across the galaxy. Foster's destroyers accelerated directly toward the largest concentration of enemy ships, in what appeared to be a suicidal charge that violated every principle of space combat. The Kethmori commanders watched in confusion as the human vessels increased speed rather than trying to escape or calling for negotiations. Their tactical computers could not explain why prey animals would attack predators that clearly outmatched them in numbers and firepower. Captain Nora Singh waited in her bomber squadron hidden behind a large asteroid, watching for the perfect moment to strike. The Kethmori had focused all their attention on Foster's apparent suicide run, leaving their flagship vulnerable to attack from an unexpected direction. Singh's pilots had trained for exactly this kind of desperate mission where success depended on timing and the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. The space battle erupted as Foster's destroyers opened fire at point-blank range against enemy cruisers while Singh's bombers swept in toward the Kethmori command ship. Human weapons designed for close-range combat proved surprisingly effective against alien shields that were optimized to stop long-distance energy attacks. The Kethmori discovered too late that humans preferred to fight at ranges where both sides could inflict massive damage. Lieutenant David Park led his fighter squadron in attacks that horrified both alien species watching the battle. Human pilots deliberately rammed their damaged fighters into enemy ships rather than ejecting to safety. The Kethmori had never seen prey animals willing to die rather than be captured while the rescued. Valari could not understand why humans would choose death over the possibility of survival. Park's kamikaze tactics created chaos in the enemy formation. as Kethmori ships broke formation to avoid collision with human fighters. The aliens had no experience dealing with enemies who treated their own lives as weapons to be expended for tactical advantage. Their predator psychology could not comprehend creatures that became more dangerous as they took damage, rather than trying to minimize their losses. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos led the first human boarding party to penetrate a Kethmori vessel using breach pods that cut through alien hull armor like knives through paper. The boarding operation revealed the true horror of what the Kethmori did to their victims and why they were so determined to expand across the galaxy. Inside the enemy ship, Santos found chambers filled with captured beings connected to machines that were slowly draining their life force. The Kethmori absorption process was worse than anyone had imagined from the fragmentary reports received from Morden. The captured aliens were kept conscious during the draining procedure, so their terror and pain could be harvested along with their biological essence. The Kethmori fed on both the physical and emotional energy of their victims, becoming stronger and more intelligent with each world they consumed. Santos and her Marines fought through corridors designed for creatures much larger than humans, while the Kethmori defenders struggled to understand why these small prey animals were so difficult to kill. Human soldiers absorbed damage that should have been instantly fatal while continuing to fight with increasing ferocity. The aliens began to experience something their species had never known in thousands of years of conquest, which was genuine fear of their supposed victims. Commander Foster's squadron had taken severe casualties, but succeeded in their mission of creating confusion in the enemy fleet. The Kethmori formation collapsed as ship commanders tried to respond to multiple threats while dealing with human tactics that made no sense according to their understanding of predator and prey relationships. Foster himself was wounded but remained in command as his flagship continued ramming attacks against enemy vessels. Captain Singh's bombers reached the Kethmori flagship and began their attack run just as the enemy finally understood what was happening. The human rescue fleet had never intended to fight a conventional battle, but had planned from the beginning to cause maximum damage regardless of their own losses. This willingness to trade lives for objectives violated every assumption the Kethmori had made about how intelligent species behaved. The flagship's defenses were formidable, but had been designed to stop attacks by species that valued their own survival above mission success. Singh's pilots flew through defensive fire that should have driven them away while maintaining formation and targeting accuracy that impressed even their enemies. The bombers penetrated the flagship's shields through sheer determination and began attacking critical systems. Lieutenant Park's surviving fighters provided cover for the bomber attack by engaging enemy interceptors in close combat that turned into aerial knife fights. Human pilots used their fighters as clubs and shields while firing at ranges so close that explosions damaged both sides. The Kethmori pilots had never experienced combat where enemies actively sought mutual destruction rather than trying to gain advantage through superior positioning. Sergeant Santos discovered that the Kethmori had been using absorbed knowledge from previous victims to enhance their own technology and capabilities. Each conquered species had contributed something to the Horde's growing power, whether it was scientific knowledge from peaceful races or combat skills from warrior cultures. The Villari's advanced technology was already being integrated into new Kethmori weapons and defenses. The boarding party fought through to the ship's central chamber where they found hundreds of captured Villari connected to the absorption machines. Santos ordered her Marines to destroy the equipment while she worked to free the prisoners, but many of the aliens were too weak to survive the disconnection process. The rescue became a mercy mission as humans tried to save beings who had been tortured beyond their ability to recover. The battle in space reached its climax as Captain Singh's flagship bomber made its final attack run against the Kethmori command vessel. Enemy fire had destroyed most of her squadron, but the remaining bombers pressed forward through defensive barriers that grew stronger with each passing second. Singh knew that her attack might be the only chance to demonstrate that humans could hurt the supposedly invincible Horde. The bomber attack succeeded in crippling the Kethmori flagship, but at the cost of Singh's entire squadron. The enemy command ship began listing as its power systems failed while escape pods launched carrying surviving crew members toward other vessels in the fleet. The destruction of their flagship sent shock waves through the Kethmori formation. As commanders realized that their prey had managed to wound them, Commander Foster's destroyers had been reduced to floating wrecks but continued firing at enemy ships, using backup power systems and emergency weapons. The Kethmori watched in amazement as human vessels that should have been helpless continued to pose threats until they were completely destroyed. This level of determination was unknown among species that had evolved to survive through submission. Or flight. Sergeant Santos and her surviving Marines fought their way back to the breach pods, carrying as many rescued Velari as they could save. The freed prisoners spoke of horrors that would haunt them for the rest of their lives, but also expressed amazement at seeing creatures that fought the Kethmori without fear. For the first time since the invasion began, the Velari had hoped that their oppressors could be defeated. The space battle ended with the human fleet badly damaged but victorious in achieving their primary objectives. They had rescued hundreds of Velari survivors while proving that the Kethmori could be hurt by species they considered inferior. More importantly, they had captured intelligence about the absorption process and the true scope of the enemy's plans. For galactic conquest. As the surviving human ships prepared to withdraw, they intercepted Kethmori communications that revealed the most terrifying truth yet discovered. The force they had just fought was only a scouting expedition sent to evaluate potential prey species. The main Kethmori armada, led by their god emperor, Vashtar, was already traveling toward Earth. With ships and weapons that made this battle seem like a minor skirmish, the humans had won their first victory against the Horde, but in doing so they had revealed their existence and capabilities to an enemy that commanded resources beyond imagination. The real war was just beginning, and Earth would soon face an assault designed to break the spirit of the Deathworlders who had dared to resist. The galaxy's apex predators? General Patricia Wells stood in the Emergency Command Center, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching countdown timers that marked humanity's last chance for survival. The Kethmori main fleet would arrive at Earth in less than 36 hours, bringing with them the God Emperor Vashtar and weapons capable of cracking planets like eggs. Intelligence reports suggested the enemy armada contained thousands of ships, including planet killers that had destroyed entire star systems during the Horde's expansion across the galaxy. Dr. Robert Kim worked frantically in laboratories around the world, coordinating the most dangerous scientific experiment in human history. Project Omega had been conceived as humanity's final gambit when all conventional defenses failed. The plan involved weaponizing Earth itself using the planet's natural hazards as force multipliers against an enemy that had evolved in the safety of controlled environments. Kim's teams had spent weeks preparing to trigger volcanic eruptions that would fill the atmosphere with toxic ash, while electromagnetic pulse generators would disrupt alien technology that had never been designed to operate in Earth's chaotic magnetic field. Ocean thermal plants had been converted to create massive storms, while biological warfare laboratories prepared to release modified bacteria that would be harmless to humans but lethal to alien biology. Captain Thomas Cross commanded the remnants of Earth's defense fleet in hit-and-run attacks, designed to appear like desperate last stands while actually hurting the advancing Kethmori forces into specific orbital positions. His ships had been equipped with experimental weapons based on intelligence gathered during the battle in the Velari system, but everyone understood that conventional tactics would not be enough to stop an enemy this powerful. Cross's fleet fought a series of running battles in the outer solar system that looked like heroic but doomed attempts to defend humanity's birthworld. The Kethmori God Emperor watched these skirmishes with satisfaction, believing that the troublesome Deathworlders were finally showing proper fear in the face of overwhelming force. Vashtar had personally come to Earth to oversee the absorption of the species that had dared to interfere with his expansion. The God Emperor's flagship was a mobile world larger than most moons and equipped with absorption chambers capable of processing millions of victims simultaneously. Vashtar planned to drain every human on Earth while forcing the survivors to watch their planet being stripped of all life. This demonstration would serve as a warning to any other species that might consider resisting the Kethmori horde. Commander Jessica Morgan prepared her assault teams for the most important boarding action in human history, knowing that success would require penetrating defenses that had never been breached in thousands of years of warfare. Her soldiers had been equipped with weapons and armor designed specifically to exploit Kethmori weaknesses discovered during previous battles, while psychological warfare specialists worked to turn human reputation as Deathworlders into a weapon of terror. As the enemy fleet approached Earth's orbit, General Wells activated the first phase of Project Omega by triggering seismic weapons that had been secretly installed at fault lines around the planet. Massive earthquakes began reshaping continents while volcanic eruptions filled the sky with ash that would interfere with alien sensors and communication systems. To outside observers, it appeared that Earth was destroying itself rather than allowing conquest. The Kethmori fleet entered Earth's gravity well, expecting to find a dying world whose defenders had been broken by the display of imperial power. Instead, they discovered that the planet's violent geology was just the beginning of humanity's defensive preparations. Atmospheric processors began generating storms of unprecedented intensity, while electromagnetic weapons created aurora displays that disrupted alien navigation systems. God Emperor Vashtar's tactical computers struggled to understand what was happening, as Earth's natural disasters seemed to be coordinated rather than random. The planet's weather patterns were behaving like a weapon system, while gravitational anomalies created navigation hazards that threatened even the largest Kethmori vessels. This level of environmental warfare was beyond anything the Horde had encountered during their galactic conquest. Dr. Kim's biological weapons began taking effect as modified Earth bacteria attacked alien life support systems throughout the enemy fleet. The Kethmori had evolved in sterile environments and possessed no natural resistance to the aggressive microorganisms that thrived in Earth's chaotic biosphere. Alien crew members began falling ill with diseases that their medical technology could not identify or treat. Captain Cross's fleet launched their final attack run against the God Emperor's flagship, using ramming tactics that violated every principle of space combat except the human principle of victory at any cost. Cross himself piloted the lead ship in a kamikaze attack designed to breach the flagship's defenses, while his remaining vessels created corridors for boarding parties to follow. The assault succeeded beyond anyone's hopes as human ships penetrated shields that had been designed to stop energy weapons rather than kinetic impacts from vessels willing to sacrifice themselves for tactical advantage. Commander Morgan's boarding parties followed the breaching ships into the flagship's interior, where they encountered Kethmori defenders who had never faced enemies that became more dangerous when wounded. Inside the flagship, Morgan discovered absorption chambers containing millions of victims from across the galaxy, including the missing populations of dozens of conquered worlds. The scale of the Kethmori genocide was beyond anything humans had imagined, with entire species reduced to energy sources for the Horde's expansion. Morgan's assault teams began destroying the absorption equipment while fighting through corridors filled with the screams of tortured beings. God Emperor Vashtar confronted the human intruders, personally leading his elite guard in a battle that would determine the fate of both species. The ancient ruler had absorbed the essence of countless beings over thousands of years, making him nearly invincible by conventional standards. However, he had never faced creatures that refused to acknowledge the concept of invincibility. The battle between Vashtar and Morgan's assault team raged through the flagship's command center as Earth's weaponized environment continued devastating the Kethmori fleet outside. Human soldiers armed with weapons that should have been inadequate proved capable of wounding a being that had seemed immortal, while the God Emperor experienced genuine physical pain for the first time in millennia. Morgan herself engaged Vashtar in single combat while her soldiers destroyed the flagship's control systems and freed prisoners from the absorption chambers. The God Emperor's vast knowledge and absorbed abilities meant nothing against an opponent who fought without regard for personal survival while using tactics that had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. The psychological impact of the battle proved as important as the physical damage as Kethmori. Warriors throughout the fleet began experiencing fear for the first time in their species' history. The sight of their supposedly immortal god-emperor being wounded by prey animals shattered their worldview and caused panic that spread faster than any human weapon. Earth's environmental defenses reached their climax as volcanic eruptions created atmospheric conditions that were toxic to alien biology, while electromagnetic storms disabled Kethmori technology across the entire fleet. The planet that had seemed like an easy target had become a hostile environment that attacked invaders with the fury of a living thing defending itself. Commander Morgan delivered the final blow to God Emperor Vashtar using a weapon that had been forged from Earth, metals and powered by human determination rather than advanced technology. The ancient ruler's death sent shock waves through the Kethmori collective consciousness as millions of absorbed minds were suddenly freed from his control. The Kethmori fleet began retreating from Earth's system as their command structure collapsed and their soldiers deserted rather than face the Deathworlders who had accomplished the impossible. Surviving ships fled toward the edge of the galaxy, carrying word that the Horde's expansion had been permanently stopped by creatures that thrived on the kind of violence that would destroy any civilized species. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth found itself transformed from an isolated world into the center of a galactic community that suddenly looked to humanity for protection against threats that had seemed unstoppable. The Valari Republic offered alliance and technological exchange, while other species that had hidden from the Kethmori emerged to pledge support for the Deathworlders who had saved them. General Wells surveyed the damage to Earth caused by Project Omega and began planning the massive reconstruction effort that would be needed to repair the planet. The environmental weapons had been devastating, but Earth's biosphere was already beginning to recover with the resilience that had allowed life to flourish on such a violent world. Dr. Kim's research teams began studying captured Kethmori technology and absorbed knowledge while working to help the millions of freed prisoners recover from their ordeal. The intelligence gathered during the battle would lead to medical breakthroughs and scientific advances that would benefit species across the galaxy. Commander Morgan stood on the bridge of the captured flagship looking out at Earth. Through viewports that had witnessed the conquest of thousands of worlds, the planet below showed scars from the battle, but also the lights of cities where humans were already working to rebuild and improve. She realized that humanity's greatest victory was not defeating the Kethmori, but proving that even the most dangerous predators in the galaxy could not break the spirit of creatures who called a Deathworld home. The war was over, but humanity's role as galactic peacekeepers was just beginning. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear of predators like the Kethmori began to hope that the universe might become a place where civilization could flourish under the protection of the Deathworlders who had refused to submit to tyranny. Captain Lyrics had never felt fear like this before. Her crystal body shook as she watched the control panel flash red warning lights. The mining ship Gentle Current was dying in the cold darkness of space. "Captain, the engines are completely dead," said Engineer Kess. His voice came through their shared mind link, but it sounded weak and scared. "We have no power to move the ship." Lyrics pressed her clear hands against the navigation screen. Outside the ship, she could see the dangerous asteroid belt spinning slowly around them. This was the Forbidden Zone, the place where no crystal people were supposed to go. The radiation from the nearby planet was already making her crew sick. "How long do we have?" she asked. Kess checked his instruments. His crystal form was getting dimmer by the minute. "Maybe 6 hours before the radiation kills us all. The ship's shields are too weak for this area." Navigator Quill looked up from his station. "Captain, I have bad news. The communication system is broken. It's sending out a distress signal on all frequencies." Lyrics's crystal body flashed bright with panic. "All frequencies? Even the restricted ones?" "Yes, Captain. Including the channels that lead to the Deathworld systems." The bridge became very quiet. Every crystal person in the galaxy knew about the Deathworld channels. They were the communication lines that connected to the inner systems where the most dangerous beings in the galaxy lived. The stories told of creatures who could survive in crushing gravity, who bathed in deadly radiation, and whose very touch could shatter crystal bodies. "Turn it off right now," Lyrics ordered. Kess worked frantically at his controls. "I can't, Captain. The power coupling is melted. I need at least 47 minutes to fix it." 47 minutes. Lyrics did the math in her head. If any of the Deathworld species heard their signal, they would all be dead long before help could arrive. The Crystal People had always avoided the inner systems because nothing good ever came from those places. The ship's systems made a soft chiming sound. Someone was answering their distress call. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Fleet. We have received your distress signal. State your emergency and prepare for immediate assistance." The voice was rough and harsh, speaking in the trade language but with an accent that made Lyrics' crystal structure vibrate with fear. She had heard that accent before in the old stories. It was the voice of humans. "Captain," Quill whispered, "our sensors are picking up something big approaching fast." Lyrics watched the sensor display in horror. Multiple ships were coming toward them, and they were coming fast. The signatures were unlike anything in their databases. Massive, heavily armed, and moving with the kind of speed that only military vessels could achieve. "Captain, what should we do?" asked Engineer Kess. Lyrics looked around at her crew. They were all looking at her, waiting for orders. But what could she tell them? They were trapped in a dying ship, surrounded by deadly radiation. And now the most feared species in the galaxy was coming to find them. "We wait," she said finally. "And we hope they are not as terrible as the stories say." The communication system crackled again. "Alien vessel, this is Admiral Kane. We are 3 minutes from your position. Prepare for contact." 3 minutes. Lyrics closed her eyes and tried to remember the prayers her grandmother had taught her. The Crystal People had always been peaceful. They mined minerals from safe asteroids, traded with friendly species, and never bothered anyone. They had no weapons, no defenses, and no experience with the kind of beings who lived in the Death Worlds. "Captain," Quill said quietly, "I'm reading more ships, lots more ships." Lyrics opened her eyes and looked at the sensor display. Her crystal body went completely dark with shock. The screen showed dozens of contacts, all moving toward their position. Each one was larger than their entire mining ship. "How many?" she asked. 47 vessels, Captain. "They're forming up. Around us, 47 warships." The humans had sent an entire fleet to answer their simple distress call. Lyrics had heard stories of human military tactics, but seeing it happen was different. These were not the actions of a peaceful rescue mission. This was the response of a species that expected trouble everywhere they went. "All vessels, this is Admiral Kane." The voice came through the speakers again. "Form defensive positions. Unknown contacts approaching from Sector 7. Lyrics felt her crystal structure crack slightly. The humans were not just here to help. They were here to fight. They had brought enough firepower to destroy planets, and they were setting up a battle formation around her small mining ship. "Captain," Kess said, "what if they think we're the enemy?" It was a thought that had occurred to Lyrics as well. The humans had arrived expecting trouble. They had brought weapons designed for war, not rescue. What if they decided that the Crystal People were the threat they needed to eliminate? "Open communications," she ordered. "Maybe we can explain," the response came immediately. "Alien vessel. This is Admiral Kane. We are here to provide assistance. However, this sector is now under human protection. Any hostile forces will be destroyed." Lyrics noticed that the human admiral had not said they were here to rescue anyone. He had said, "They were here to protect." There was a difference, and it made her even more nervous. "Sir," she heard someone say in the background of the human transmission, "we're detecting weapon signatures throughout the asteroid belt. Something else is here." The human admiral's voice became harder. "All ships power up weapon systems. We may have company." Through the viewports of the gentle current, Lyrics could see the human fleet spreading out around them. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering. covered in weapon systems and defense screens. They moved with the precision of predators, turning space itself into a fortress. "Captain," Quill whispered, "I think we made a very big mistake." Lyrics nodded slowly. They had sent out a simple distress signal, asking for help with engine problems. Instead, they had summoned the galaxy's most dangerous military force. The humans had come ready for war, and now they were trapped in the middle of whatever battle was about to begin. The communication system chimed again. "Alien vessel, prepare for boarding. We're sending a medical team to assess your condition." Lyrics looked at her crew. They were all scared, but they were also dying from radiation poisoning. Whatever the humans planned to do to them, it had to be better than dying slowly in a broken ship. "Prepare for boarding," she told her crew, "and pray that the Deathworlders are not as terrible as we fear." Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the tactical display with the calm focus of a man who had seen too many battles. The alien ship appeared on the screen as a small, fragile dot surrounded by the growing formation of human vessels. Each ship that arrived made the rescue mission look more like an invasion. "Sir, we now have 47 ships in formation," reported Lieutenant Torres from her position at the sensor console. "The entire Third Fleet has responded to the distress call." Kane nodded without taking his eyes off the display. This was exactly what he had expected. When Earth had first joined the galactic community, they had learned quickly that showing weakness was dangerous. The response to any situation involving human vessels was always the same: overwhelming force deployed immediately. "What's our tactical assessment, Commander Reed?" Kane asked his tactical officer. Commander Reed's cybernetic eye glowed as it processed the incoming data. "Single vessel, Captain. The construction appears to be crystalline, very advanced, but extremely fragile. The hull is already showing stress fractures from the radiation in this sector." Kane studied the readings. The alien ship was beautiful in its own way, but it was also completely unsuited for survival in this environment. "How long before it breaks apart?" "At current radiation levels, maybe 4 hours, less if they try to move," Reed replied. "Life signs?" "Definitely non-human, sir. The biosignatures are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be some kind of crystalline life form. Temperature readings suggest they're suffering from severe radiation exposure." Kane watched as more human vessels dropped out of faster than light travel. Destroyers took up defensive positions while cruisers formed a protective screen. The massive bulk of 3 dreadnoughts anchored the formation, their weapon systems already charging. "Sir," Torres called out, "we're receiving a response from the alien vessel." The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Kane had heard before. It was musical, almost like singing, but the translation software rendered it in heavily accented trade language. "Human vessels, this is Captain Lyrics of the mining ship Gentle Current. We are experiencing technical difficulties and require assistance. We mean no harm." Kane studied the tactical display. The alien ship had no weapons signatures, no defensive systems, and no escort vessels. It was exactly what it appeared to be: a civilian mining vessel in distress. "Captain Lyrics, this is Admiral Kane. We are prepared to render assistance. However, I must inform you that this sector is now under human protection. Any hostile vessels approaching will be met with appropriate force." There was a long pause before the alien captain responded. "Admiral, we are alone. There are no other vessels with us." Kane frowned. His sensors were telling a different story. "Commander Reed, scan the asteroid belt. I want to know what else is out there." Reed's fingers flew over his controls. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the belt. They appear to be dormant, but there are definitely artificial structures embedded in the larger asteroids." "Hostile?" Kane asked. "Unknown, sir, but they're big." "Really big," Kane made his decision. "All vessels maintain defensive positions. Something doesn't feel right about this situation." On the bridge of the Gentle Current, Captain Lyrics watched the human fleet with growing amazement and terror. Each ship was a work of art dedicated to warfare. Their hulls were covered in weapon systems she couldn't even identify. The energy signatures from their engines suggested power levels that could crack planets. "Captain," Navigator Quill said quietly, "why would they bring so many ships to rescue us?" Lyrics had been wondering the same thing. I don't know. Perhaps. This is normal for them. Engineer Kess looked up from his futile attempts to repair the engines. "Captain, I've been monitoring their communications. They're not just here to help us. They're preparing for a battle." The thought sent vibrations of fear through Lyrics's crystal body. "A battle? Against whom?" "I don't know, Captain. But they seem to think something else is coming." As if summoned by their conversation, the human admiral's voice came through the speakers again. "Captain Lyrics, we're detecting your ship's condition is deteriorating rapidly. We need to get your crew to safety." "Thank you, Admiral," Lyrics replied. "We are grateful for your assistance." "Don't thank me yet," Kane said grimly. "We're also detecting that your mining operations may have disturbed something that was meant to stay hidden." Lyrics felt her crystal structure flash with alarm. "What do you mean?" "The energy signatures in the asteroid belt are not natural. They're artificial, and they're starting to wake up." On the human bridge, Commander Reed was studying the new sensor data with growing concern. "Sir, whatever's in those asteroids, it's been dormant for a very long time. The power levels are off the charts." Kane activated the fleet communication system. "All vessels, this is Kane. We have a potential hostile situation developing. The alien mining operations appear to have activated something in the asteroid belt. Prepare for contact." The response was immediate. Throughout the fleet, weapon systems powered up, shields reinforced, and combat crews took their positions. The 47 human vessels transformed from a rescue formation into a battle fleet in a matter of minutes. "Sir," Torres reported, "we're detecting movement in the asteroid belt. Something big is coming out." Kane watched the tactical display as the first artificial structure began to separate from the asteroids. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of his largest dreadnought. As it moved, more structures began to activate, each one larger and more threatening than the last. "My God," Reed whispered. "How many are there?" "I count 23 separate contacts," Torres replied. "They're forming up into some kind of formation." Kane studied the approaching vessels. They were ancient, covered in organic growths that seemed to absorb light itself. Their design was unlike anything in human databases. But their intent was clear, they were warships, and they were moving toward the alien mining vessel. "Captain Lyrics," Kane called over the communication system, "do you recognize these vessels?" The response came immediately, filled with terror. "No, Admiral. We have never seen ships like these before. They were not in our surveys." Kane made his decision. All vessels form defensive screen around the alien ship. Unknown contacts are approaching with hostile intent. The human fleet moved with practiced precision. Destroyers took point positions while cruisers established overlapping fields of fire. The dreadnoughts moved into position to provide heavy fire support, their massive guns tracking the approaching unknown vessels. "Sir," Reed said quietly, "we're outnumbered almost 2 to 1. These vessels are showing technology levels we've never encountered." Kane nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to be better than they are." The first unknown vessel was now clearly visible on the main screen. It was a nightmare of dark metal and organic growths, moving with the grace of a predator. As it approached, more vessels emerged from the asteroid belt, each one more terrifying than the last. "Admiral," Captain Lyrics's voice came through the speakers, "you should leave us. Save your own people." Kane's response was immediate and final. "Negative, Captain. We came here to help, and that's what we're going to do." The unknown vessels were now close enough for detailed scans. Reed's analysis was not encouraging. "Sir, these ships are designed for system-wide destruction. Their weapon systems are unlike anything we've seen." Kane studied the formation of ancient vessels bearing down on them. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the enemy didn't expect. They had refused to abandon innocent civilians. "All vessels, prepare for engagement," Kane ordered. "We're going to show these ancient horrors what happens when you threaten someone under human protection." The space around the small alien mining vessel became a fortress of human determination. 47 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, stood ready to face an unknown enemy that had slept in the darkness for eons. Captain Lyrics watched from her dying ship as the humans prepared for battle. She had called for help and received an entire fleet. Now she was about to discover what the galaxy's most feared species did when innocent lives were threatened. Dr. Elena Vasquez felt the familiar tingle of the transporter beam as she materialized aboard the alien vessel. The moment her feet touched the deck, she knew she was somewhere completely different from any human ship. The walls seemed to be alive, pulsing with soft light that changed colors as she moved. First contact protocols are in effect, she announced to her team over the comm system. Remember, we're here to help, but stay alert. Behind her, Sergeant Mills and Corporal Davis stood ready in their powered armor. Their weapons were powered down, but their sensors were active, scanning for any threats. The two medics, Dr. Ryan Park and Nurse Jenny Walsh, carried medical equipment designed to work with unknown alien biology. The interior of the Gentle Current was beautiful in a way that human engineering could never achieve. The corridors curved in organic patterns, and the walls were covered in crystalline formations that sparkled with their own inner light. The air hummed with energy that made Dr. Vasquez's instruments register unusual readings. "This is incredible," Dr. Park whispered, looking around at the alien architecture. "The entire ship appears to be grown rather than built. Focus on the mission," Dr. Vasquez reminded him. "We have injured crew members to treat." They followed the gentle curves of the corridor until they reached what appeared to be the bridge. The room was dominated by a large crystalline structure that pulsed with rainbow colors. As they entered, several alien beings turned to look at them. Dr. Vasquez had seen pictures of many different alien species, but nothing had prepared her for the Velthari. They were tall, elegant beings made of what appeared to be living crystal. Their bodies caught the light and threw it back in beautiful patterns. But even to her untrained eye, she could see that these beings were sick. Their crystal forms were cracked and their light was dim. One of the aliens approached them slowly. When she spoke, her voice came through the translation device as something like music. "I'm Captain Lyrics. Thank you for coming to help us, but I fear we may have brought danger to your people." Dr. Vasquez studied the alien captain through her helmet's medical scanner. The readings were alarming. "Captain, you and your crew are suffering from severe radiation poisoning. Your ship's shielding isn't designed for this environment." "No," Lyrics replied, her crystal form flickering with what the translator identified as sadness. "We are miners, not warriors. We came here looking for rare crystals, but our ship was damaged in the asteroid belt." Sergeant Mills moved forward, his armor sensors sweeping the area. "Ma'am, I'm reading massive structural damage throughout the ship. This vessel won't hold together much longer." Dr. Vasquez nodded, already planning the evacuation. "Captain Lyrics, we need to get your crew to one of our medical ships. Our doctors can treat radiation exposure." The alien captain's form pulsed with colors that the translation system couldn't interpret. "You would help us?" "But we are strangers. We have nothing to offer your people." "That's what we do," Dr. Vasquez replied simply. "When someone sends a distress signal, we respond." What she didn't tell the alien captain was the real reason for the massive human response. After humanity's first encounters with galactic civilization, they had learned that space was full of predators. Rescue missions were often ambushes, and distress calls were sometimes traps. The standing orders were clear. Every human vessel was required to respond to distress calls with maximum force. "Dr. Vasquez," Sergeant Mills said over the private comm channel, "we have a problem. My sensors are detecting something big moving in the asteroid belt. Multiple contacts, all headed this way." Dr. Vasquez felt her heart rate increase. "How big?" "Bigger than anything in our databases, and they're not showing up as friendly." She looked around at the sick alien crew members. There were 12 of them, all suffering from radiation poisoning. Getting them to safety would take time, and time was something they might not have. All right, people, she said to her team. We're going to do this fast. Dr. Park, start treating the most serious cases. Nurse Walsh, prepare the portable medical units. Sergeant Mills, coordinate with the ship for immediate evacuation. The work began immediately. Dr. Vasquez watched as her team moved with practiced efficiency, treating alien patients with the same care they would give to human crew members. The Velthari watched in amazement as the human medical team worked to save their lives. Your people, Captain Lyric said to Dr. Vasquez, they are not what we expected. What did you expect? Dr. Vasquez asked while monitoring the medical readings. The stories we hear about humans, ... They say you are Deathworlders, but that you bring only violence and destruction. Dr. Vasquez paused in her work. It was true that humans had a reputation in the galaxy. Their home planet was considered a death world, a place where only the most dangerous species could survive. Other races saw them as violent and aggressive, always ready for war. We are Deathworlders, she admitted. But that doesn't mean we're monsters. I don't understand, Lyric said. Dr. Vasquez looked around at her team. Sergeant Mills was gently helping a wounded Velthari crew member, his massive armored form moving with careful precision. Dr. Park was working to stabilize a patient whose crystal structure was badly cracked, his face showing the kind of concentration that came from years of saving lives. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day, she explained. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme weather, everything on Earth was designed to end human life. But we survived. We learned to be tough, to be ready for anything, to fight when we had to. But you also learned to heal, Lyrics observed, watching Dr. Park work. Yes, Dr. Vasquez agreed. We learned that life is precious because it's so fragile. We learned to protect those who can't protect themselves. The transport process began as the first of the Velthari crew members was beamed aboard the Prometheus. The human medical bay had been quickly modified to accommodate crystalline life forms, with specialized equipment that could work with their unique biology. Dr. Vasquez, Sergeant Mills called out, we need to move faster. Those contacts in the asteroid belt are getting closer. She nodded and activated her CUM unit. Admiral Kane, this is Dr. Vasquez. We need more time to evacuate the crew. Kane's voice came back immediately. Doctor, we're detecting 23 unknown vessels approaching our position. They appear to be hostile. How much time do you need? Dr. Vasquez looked around at the remaining Velthari crew members. At least 15 minutes to get everyone to safety. You'll have it, Kane replied. Whatever happens, we'll give you the time you need. Captain Lyrics had been listening to the conversation. Her crystal form flickered with concern. Admiral, you should take your ships and leave. We are not worth starting a war. Kane's response was immediate and final. Captain, with respect, that's not your decision to make. You sent a distress signal. And we responded, that makes you our responsibility. Dr. Vasquez felt a surge of pride in her species. This was what made humans different from other races in the galaxy. They didn't calculate the cost of helping others. They didn't weigh the risks against the benefits. When someone needed help, they helped. All right, people, she said to her team. Let's get these people to safety. We have the best fleet in the galaxy protecting us. As the evacuation continued, the alien crew members were transported one by one to the human medical ship. Each one was treated with the same care and attention that would be given to human patients. The Velthari watched in amazement as the beings they had feared proved to be their salvation. Your Admiral, Lyric said to Dr. Vasquez as they prepared to beam her to the Prometheus. He risks his entire fleet for strangers. Dr. Vasquez smiled. Captain, you're not strangers anymore. You're under human protection now. As they materialized, in the medical bay of the Prometheus, Captain Lyric saw something that would stay with her forever. The same ships that had arrived with enough firepower to destroy worlds were now serving as hospital vessels, their crews working to save alien lives. Outside the medical bay's windows, she could see the human fleet forming a protective wall around them. The ancient vessels emerging from the asteroid belt were massive and terrifying, but the humans stood their ground. Dr. Vasquez, she said quietly, I think I understand now why the galaxy fears your people. Oh? Dr. Vasquez replied, checking her patient's vital signs. They fear us because we're dangerous, Lyric said. But they should fear you because you're good. Dr. Marcus Webb had never worked on patients like these before. The medical bay of the Prometheus hummed with activity as he and his team treated the 12 Valkyrie crew members. The crystalline beings lay on specially modified biobeds, their translucent forms slowly growing brighter as the radiation was cleaned from their systems. Remarkable, Dr. Webb said to his assistant, Dr. Lisa Chun. Their entire biology is based on resonating crystal matrices. They're essentially living gems. Captain Lyrics watched from her medical bed as the human doctors worked to save her crew. Her crystal form was now stable enough that she could think clearly, but she was still amazed by what she was seeing. The humans moved with incredible precision, using medical technology that seemed almost magical. Dr. Webb, she said, your healing methods are extraordinary. On our world, radiation exposure like this would mean certain death. Dr. Webb looked up from his instruments. Different worlds. Create different solutions, Captain. Your people evolved in a low-radiation environment with gentle gravity. Your crystal bodies are perfectly designed for that kind of place. But not for this place, Lyrics observed. No, Dr. Webb agreed. This system has radiation levels that would kill most species, but it's just another day for us. Admiral Kane entered the medical bay, his tall form moving carefully around the delicate alien patients. Despite his intimidating appearance, he was clearly trying not to disturb the healing process. Captain Lyrics, he said, I need to understand what brought you to this sector. Our sensors are detecting unusual activity in the asteroid belt. Lyrics's crystal form flickered with uncertainty. We were following mineral readings, Admiral. Our deep space surveys showed rare crystal formations in the asteroids. The energy signatures suggested enough material to power our cities for generations. Kane frowned. Captain, this system has been under human observation for 3 years. We've never detected any crystal formations. Navigator Quill, who had been silent during his treatment, suddenly began pulsing with urgent light patterns. Captain, I must tell them. The readings we detected were not natural formations. Kane's expression became serious. Explain, our deep scans showed artificial structures, Quill said, his voice trembling through the translation system. Massive constructions buried inside the largest asteroids. We thought they were ancient mining facilities, but now I fear we disturbed something that was meant to remain hidden. Dr. Webb's instruments began showing elevated stress levels from all the Valkyrie patients. Admiral, whatever they found is causing them significant psychological distress. Kane activated his comm unit. Bridge, this is Kane. I need a full tactical sweep of the asteroid belt. Look for anything that doesn't belong there. The response came within minutes. Sir, we're detecting multiple energy signatures activating throughout the belt. Whatever was sleeping in those asteroids is waking up. Through the medical bay's large windows, the human fleet could be seen moving into combat formation. The same? Ships that had arrived to rescue a few stranded miners were now preparing to face an unknown threat that had been dormant for unknown ages. Admiral, Captain Lyric said, your people truly are Deathworlders. You face the unknown with weapons. Ready? Kane turned to look at her, his expression thoughtful. Captain, we learned something important when we first left our world. The galaxy is full of dangerous things. When we came to help you, we brought weapons because peace can only exist when good people are ready to fight for it. But why? Lyrics asked, why risk your lives for strangers? Kane was quiet for a moment, watching his fleet prepare for battle. Because that's what civilized people do. We help those who need help. Engineer Kess, who had been recovering quietly in his bed, suddenly spoke up. Admiral, there's something else you should know. The structures we found, they're not just artificial, they're broadcasting. Broadcasting what? Kane asked. We don't know, Kess admitted. But the signals are getting stronger, and they're being answered. Dr. Webb looked up from his medical readings. Admiral, the stress level's in. Our patients are increasing. Whatever these signals are, they're affecting the Valkyrie on a fundamental level. Kane activated his come again. Bridge, are we detecting any response to these signals? Sir, we're reading multiple contacts dropping out of faster than light. Travel at the edge of the system. They're not human vessels. Through the medical bay speakers, the voice of Commander Reed could be heard. Admiral, we're detecting 23 vessels emerging from the asteroid belt. They appear to be of the same design as the buried structures. Kane looked at the Valkyrie patients, noting their increasing distress. Captain Lyrics, have you ever seen ships like these before? Lyrics's crystal form flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme fear. No, Admiral, but the energy signatures. They match something from our oldest historical records. What kind of records? Kane asked. Stories of the Devourers, Lyrics whispered. Ancient enemies that consumed entire star systems. They fed on the life energy of crystalline civilizations. Our ancestors fled across the galaxy to escape them. Dr. Webb's instruments began showing critical stress levels. Admiral, we need to get these patients to a safer location. Whatever these devourers are, they're having a severe effect on crystalline life forms. Kane made his decision immediately. Doctor, prepare your patients for emergency transport to the hospital ship. Mercy, it's the safest vessel in the fleet. As the medical team began preparing for the transfer, the first of the ancient vessels became visible through the medical bay's windows. It was a nightmare of dark metal and organic growths, moving through space with predatory grace. Admiral, Captain Lyric said, you must understand. If these truly are the Devourers, they will not stop with us. They will consume every crystalline civilization in the galaxy. Kane studied the approaching vessels through the window. Then we'll stop them here. But Admiral, Lyrics protested, your fleet is outnumbered. These vessels are designed for system-wide destruction. Kane's smile was grim but determined. Captain, you're about to learn something important about humans. We don't calculate odds when innocent lives are at stake. The transfer to the hospital ship began immediately. As each Valkyrie patient was moved to safety, they watched the human fleet forming a protective barrier around them. Destroyers took point positions while cruisers established defensive screens. The massive dreadnoughts anchored the formation, their weapon systems charging with deadly energy. Dr. Webb, Captain Lyric said as she was prepared for transport, your people are preparing to fight an enemy they know nothing about? That's what we do, Dr. Webb replied simply. When someone needs protection, we protect them, but why? Lyrics asked, what do you gain from this? Dr. Webb paused in his work, considering the question. Captain, humans come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We learn to survive by helping each other. We learn that the strongest person is the one who protects the weakest. And now you protect strangers, Lyrics observed. Now we protect anyone who needs protection? Dr. Webb corrected. That's what makes us human. As Captain Lyrics was transported to the hospital ship, she watched through the window as the human fleet prepared for battle. The ancient Devourers were approaching with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. But they had never faced humans before. Dr. Webb, she said over the comm system, your people are going to fight an enemy that has destroyed entire civilizations. Captain, Dr. Webb replied, our people are going to show these Devourers what happens when you threaten someone under human protection. The space around the small alien mining vessel had become a fortress of human determination. 47. Warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, stood ready to face an ancient evil that had slept in the darkness for millennia, but the humans weren't fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting for the simple principle that good people help those in need. They were fighting because 12 crystalline beings had sent a distress signal, and humans always answer distress calls. Captain Lyrics realized then that the galaxy had been wrong about the Deathworlders. They weren't dangerous because they brought death. They were dangerous because they refused to let death claim the innocent. The ancient vessels that emerged from the asteroid belt were nightmares given form. Captain Lyrics watched from the medical bay of the hospital ship Mercy as the enemy fleet approached. Each Devourer ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the largest human vessel. Their hulls were covered in organic growths that seemed to absorb light itself, making them appear like holes in space. "Analysis complete," came Commander Reed's voice over the communication system. 23 vessels, technology level unknown, but their energy signatures are beyond anything we've seen before. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, his fleet arrayed around him like a protective shield. The 47 human ships that had seemed so powerful when they arrived now looked small against the approaching ancient armada. "Sir," Lieutenant Torres reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel. It's in the Velthari language." The hospital ship, Captain Lyrix's crystal form, blazed with terrified recognition. "No," she whispered, "it cannot be. The Devourers were destroyed long ago." Dr. Webb looked up from his medical instruments. "Captain, what are Devourers?" "The ancient destroyers of all crystalline life," Lyrix explained, her voice filled with ancestral fear. "They consumed entire star systems, feeding on the harmonic frequencies that power crystal-based civilizations. Our people fled across the galaxy to escape them." The translation came through the ship's speakers, the words heavy with malevolent hunger. "Crystal singers detected. Awakening protocols engaged. Harvesting will commence." Kane's response was immediate and decisive. "All vessels, battle stations, form defensive screen around the alien refugees. No one gets through." The space around the hospital ship transformed into a fortress of human engineering. Destroyers moved into point defense positions while cruisers established overlapping fields of fire. The 3 dreadnoughts formed the backbone of the defense, their massive weapons tracking the approaching ancient vessels. "Sir," Commander Reed said quietly, "we're heavily outnumbered. These vessels are designed for destroying entire solar systems." Kane studied the tactical display, watching as the Devourer ships moved into attack formation. "Then we'll have to be smarter and more determined than they are." "Admiral," Captain Lyrix's voice came over the communication system, "you must understand what you're facing. These beings have destroyed civilizations that lasted millions of years. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. They exist only to consume." "Then they picked the wrong species to mess with," Kane replied grimly. The first Devourer vessel opened fire, its weapon tearing through space with energy that made the vacuum itself seem to scream. The beam struck the shields of the destroyer Defiant, causing massive damage but not destroying the ship. "All vessels, return fire," Kane commanded. The human fleet responded as one, their combined firepower creating a wall of destruction that met the ancient attack. Plasma bolts, energy beams, and kinetic rounds filled the space between the 2 fleets. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The ancient Devourers, weapons of cosmic horror that had once terrorized entire sectors of space, met the concentrated fury of humanity's finest military vessels. The destroyer Defiant was the first to fall, its captain ramming his damaged ship into a Devourer vessel 3 times its size. His final words echoed across the fleet, "Not one step back." The cruiser Yorktown sacrificed itself to protect the medical ships, its crew ensuring that the Velthari refugees would survive even if the battle was lost. Captain Martinez and her crew of 300 gave their lives to save 12 aliens they had never met, but for every human ship that fell, they took ancient horrors with them. The humans fought with a desperate courage that the Devourers had never encountered before. Each vessel that was destroyed took at least 1 enemy ship with it. "Sir," Torres reported, "we're down to 31 vessels. The enemy has lost 8 ships." Kane watched the tactical display as his fleet continued to fight. They were losing, but they were making the enemy pay for every inch of space. "Admiral," Captain Lyrix called from the hospital ship, "your people are dying for strangers. Why do they fight so hard?" Kane's answer came without hesitation. "Because that's what we do. When someone needs help, we help them. When someone needs protection, we protect them. When someone needs to be saved, we save them." The battle raged for hours. The human fleet, designed for protecting Earth's colonies and trade routes, fought against ancient weapons that had been built to destroy entire star systems. Each human ship that fell was replaced by another, their crews fighting with the knowledge that innocent lives depended on their success. The Devourer ships began to adapt to human tactics, their ancient technology learning from each engagement. But the humans adapted faster, their commanders sharing information and developing new strategies in real time. "Sir," Commander Reed reported, "we're detecting a weakness in their shield harmonics. If we can coordinate our fire, we might be able to penetrate their defenses." Kane nodded. "All vessels, coordinate fire on the lead ship, everything we have." The surviving human ships focused their combined firepower on a single target. The ancient vessel's shields held for a moment, then collapsed under the concentrated assault. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The death of the lead vessel seemed to confuse the remaining Devourers. They had never faced an enemy that could destroy their ships, and their ancient programming struggled to adapt. "Press the attack," Kane commanded. "Don't give them time to recover." The human fleet surged forward, the remaining ships pouring fire into the confused ancient vessels. One by one, the Devourers began to fall on the hospital ship, Captain. Lyrics watched the battle in amazement. The beings the galaxy called monsters were sacrificing themselves to protect her people. The Deathworlders, who had arrived with enough firepower to conquer worlds, were using that same strength to guard the innocent. "Dr. Webb," she said quietly, "your people are not what we expected." Dr. Webb, who had been monitoring the battle while treating the wounded, looked up from his instruments. "What did you expect, Captain?" "We expected destroyers," Lyrics replied. "We expected conquerors. We expected death." "And what did you find instead?" Dr. Webb asked. Lyrics watched as the last Devourer vessel exploded under the combined fire of the human fleet. "We found Guardians." The final enemy ship fell as the human fleet delivered the killing blow. The ancient horrors that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were finally defeated by the same species that others called monsters. "All vessels, damage report," Kane commanded. The casualties were heavy. Of the 47 ships that had responded to the distress call, only 19 remained combat effective. But they had won. The Devourers were destroyed, and the innocent were safe. "Admiral," Captain Lyric said over the communication system, "how do we thank you for what you've done?" Kane's response was simple. "You don't need to thank us, Captain. You sent a distress signal, and we answered. That's what civilized people do." As the human fleet began rescue operations for their own damaged vessels, Captain Lyrics finally understood the truth about the Deathworlders. They were called dangerous not because they brought death, but because they refused to let death claim the innocent. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. When you send an SOS into the void, you never know who might answer. But if the humans of Earth respond, you can be certain of one thing: they will bring everything. They have to keep you safe. The Deathworlders had earned their reputation through strength and determination. But they had proven themselves to be something far more important than warriors. They had proven themselves to be protectors, guardians who would stand against any threat to defend those who could not defend themselves. In the end, that was what made them truly dangerous to the galaxy's predators. Not their weapons or their technology, but their absolute refusal to abandon anyone who needed help. The humans had answered an accidental distress call with their entire fleet. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what it meant to be truly civilized.